I wasn't supposed to come back here after dark. The forest road that leads to my old town is barely visible now, swallowed by thick fog that clings to the windshield like something alive. My headlights cut through in weak, trembling beams, revealing only fragments at a time. Wet trees leaning inward, mud shining like oil, and power lines hanging too low as if they've sagged under unseen weight. The radio stopped working 20 minutes ago. At first it was just static, then a low humming sound, like someone breathing too close to a microphone. I turned it off, but the silence that followed felt even worse. Not empty, watching. Every mile marker I pass looks older than it should, like time is bending backward out here. I swear I already drove past this broken sign. Twice, maybe more. Then I see it, a figure standing at the edge of the road, completely still, facing away from me. My foot lifts off the gas without me thinking. The headlights wash over it, but it doesn't move, doesn't react, just stands there in the fog, like it has been waiting longer than my car has existed. And as I slow down, I realize something that makes my hands go cold on the steering wheel. It isn't standing on the road. It's standing just above it. That's when I saw it. And I realized I was never alone on this road. It was just past midnight when I realized the road wasn't behaving normally. The forest around me felt too still, too close. Tall trees stood on both sides of the narrow road, their branches leaning inward like they were listening to something inside my car. The headlights cut through the fog in weak, pale beams, barely reaching the edges of the darkness. The air inside the car was cold, even though the windows were shut. My hand stayed on the steering wheel, but my grip slowly tightened without me noticing. The road ahead should have been simple, a straight route back through the forest. I had taken it before, many times, but something felt off. The first mile marker passed on my right, rusted metal, faded white paint, number 17. I blinked once. A few minutes later, another marker appeared, number 16. I slowed down without meaning to. My throat felt dry, like the air itself had lost moisture. The trees on the left seemed closer now. Their trunks were angled inward, almost leaning toward the road, as if the forest was narrowing behind me. I told myself it was just fatigue, just late-night driving. But then I saw the first repetition. Another mile marker, number 17 again. I let out a quiet breath I didn't realize I was holding. My foot eased off the gas slightly. The road behind me didn't feel safe anymore. I checked the mirror. Only fog and faint headlights reflected back. No cars, no movement, just silence stretching too far. I kept driving. The next marker came again. Same rust, same tilt, same cracked edge at the base. My stomach tightened. I passed it slower this time, watching it, making sure I wasn't imagining it. But the forest didn't care what I thought. The trees leaned closer again, subtle at first, then noticeable. Their branches now almost forming a canopy over the road behind me, like something was closing a door I hadn't noticed was open. My radio crackled once, a burst of static, then nothing. I tapped it once. The static returned, softer this time, almost like breathing. And then, my name, not spoken clearly, not fully formed, just fragments inside the noise, whispered between waves of static. I froze. My foot hovered over the brake. The road ahead curved slightly, but I swear I had driven this curve already. I checked the mirror again. Fog, thicker now, too thick. The next mile marker appeared without warning. Number 16. My pulse spiked. I looked back at the previous marker in my memory. 17, 16, 17 again. It wasn't alternating. It was reversing. The road wasn't moving forward. It was undoing itself. The trees shifted again. This time I saw it clearly. A shape standing near the roadside. Still, human-like, but wrong in its stillness. Too straight, too patient. It wasn't facing me. It was facing away, like it had always been there, waiting for a version of me that would eventually arrive. I slowed down, not because I wanted to, because my body stopped obeying faster thoughts. The headlights reached it fully now. The figure didn't move, didn't react. But I noticed something that made my chest tighten. It wasn't touching the ground. Not fully. Its feet hovered just slightly above the wet road surface, like gravity had forgotten how to hold it. The fog around it seemed denser, darker, almost wrapping around its shape like it belonged there. I should have driven past it. I should have kept going. But the road didn't feel like it allowed forward anymore. The radio crackled again, longer this time, and inside the static, a voice, soft, familiar, too familiar, calling my name again, but slower now, stretching it out like it was learning how to say it properly. I swallowed hard and forced my hands to stay steady. The figure still hadn't moved, still facing away, but the distance between us felt wrong, smaller than before, like the road itself was shrinking. The trees leaned in further, almost blocking the sky completely now. No stars, no moon, only fog and black branches, and the faint hum of something I could feel more than hear. I pressed the accelerator slightly. The car moved, but the road didn't respond normally. It felt like I was driving in place, like motion without progress. And as the radio fell silent again, I realized something that made my breath stop halfway through my chest. The figure ahead was closer than the last time I looked. Not walking, not moving, just nearer, as if the road itself was carrying it toward me. And in the silence that followed, I understood something I didn't want to understand. I wasn't passing it. I was circling it, again and again, and the forest was watching every loop. The fog and stay outside the car. That was the first thing I noticed. It pressed against the windows at first, soft and slow, like breath on glass. Then it started slipping in through places that should have been sealed. The air vents, the seams of the doors. Even the space between my thoughts started to feel heavier. The road still existed outside, but I could barely see it now, only white and gray, moving like something alive. My hand stayed locked on the steering wheel, knuckles pale under the glow of the headlights. I told myself to focus on driving, but the silence inside the car felt wrong. Not empty, occupied. A faint sound came from behind me, a breath, slow, controlled, almost careful, like it didn't want me to notice it was there. I didn't turn. My eyes stayed forward, locked on the fog swallowing the road. Another breath, closer this time. The mirror above the windshield reflected only the front seats, my face, the empty passenger seat. But the back seat felt different, like it wasn't part of the reflection anymore. The fog thickened again, inside the car. I could feel it now, cold against my neck, slipping past my collar like fingers made of air. Something shifted behind me, very softly, the sound of fabric adjusting. Someone sitting down more comfortably. I swallowed. Slowly, I checked the rearview mirror. At first, there was nothing, just my eyes. Then, for half a second, a shape sitting directly behind me. Still, blurry, too close, and then gone. I blinked hard. The back seat was empty again, only darkness and fog. My breathing became shallow, without permission. I kept driving. The road outside didn't feel real anymore. Just a corridor of white noise and flickering shadows. The breathing returned. Not random, rhythmic, matching mine, but always slightly delayed. Like something learning how to copy me. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "Stop," I whispered under my breath. The word disappeared into the fog inside the car. No echo, no response, just silence that felt aware. The mirror flickered again. This time, I saw it clearly. A figure in the back seat, head slightly tilted, not looking at me, but not looking away either. Just existing in a way that didn't belong in a normal car. I forced myself not to turn, not fully, not even slightly, because something deep in me knew if I looked directly at it, it would stop pretending it wasn't real. The figure vanished again, but the breathing stayed, now closer, right behind my ear. I pressed the accelerator harder. The car responded too slowly, like the road and the vehicle were arguing about movement. Outside, the fog thickened until it looked like the world had dissolved. Inside, the air felt occupied. The mirror showed only me again, but my reflection blinked late, half a second after I did. I froze. My reflection didn't. It kept staring forward. waiting. Then the image shifted slightly, just enough to suggest something sitting behind me again. But this time, it wasn't in the mirror. It was in the angle, the space between reflection and reality. I didn't breathe for a moment. The radio crackled weakly, as if it was struggling to wake up. Static filled the car again, but beneath it, a whisper, not loud, not clear, just my name again, dragged through broken signal. And then something worse. A second voice inside the static. But it wasn't speaking to me. It was speaking as me. A version of my voice that sounded older, slower, like it had been repeating the same sentence for a very long time. I gripped the wheel tighter. The fog outside shifted. For a brief moment, I saw the road again, and I saw something sitting in the back seat, not fully formed, not fully human, just a suggestion of a shape leaning forward slightly, as if listening to the same radio I was. Then it was gone again. The mirror went dark, completely fogged over from the inside. No reflection left, only white blur. The breathing stopped. I should have felt relief, but instead, the silence felt worse, like something had finished adjusting itself, and was now ready. Somewhere behind me, I heard it again, not breathing, not movement, a soft, patient shift, like someone leaning forward, waiting for me to finally acknowledge them. And in that moment, I realized something I didn't want to confirm. The passenger wasn't arriving. It had already been here, long before I started noticing. The forest didn't end the way it should have. It just thinned, like the world was being erased layer by layer, until buildings started appearing through the fog. At first, I felt relief. Roads meant people. Lights. Normality. But the closer I got, the more wrong everything became. The first street sign read a name I recognized. Almost. One letter was missing. Then another sign appeared. Same street. Different spelling again. My stomach tightened, but I kept driving. The town should have welcomed me with light. Instead, it looked tired. Houses stood in silence, their windows dim and dusty, like no one had opened them in years. But I knew this place. I should have known it. I slowed near the first intersection. A man stood on the sidewalk, facing away. Still, I rolled the window down slightly. "Excuse me," I called softly. He didn't turn, didn't react. Just stood there, like I wasn't part of his world. I drove closer. When I passed him, I saw his face in the side mirror. Blank, not expressionless, just unfinished, like the idea of a face rather than a real one. My throat tightened. I kept moving. The streets felt familiar, in the worst way, like memory without warmth. Then I saw my childhood road, or what used to be it. The houses were there, but wrong. Older, strangely abandoned, paint peeling in patterns that looked almost intentional. Every window I passed felt like it was watching me arrive, and no one reacted. No wave, no recognition, like I didn't exist in their version of the town. I turned onto my old street. My hands were shaking now. The house at the end should have been mine. It was, but it wasn't. The structure stood in place, but something essential was missing. No front door, no visible entrance at all. Just a wall where memory said there should be a doorway. I parked anyway, engine still running. Fog still lingering behind me like it had followed me here. I stepped out. The air smelled wrong. Not decay, not smoke. Something quieter, like old paper left in a closed room for too long. I walked closer. The house didn't creak, didn't react, but I felt it noticing me. Somehow, the upstairs window was dark. Then it wasn't. A shape stood behind it, watching, not moving, just observing me like I had interrupted something already in progress. I stepped forward slowly. The grass under my feet felt too soft, too forgiving, like it wasn't real ground. The shape in the window didn't disappear this time. It stayed, still watching, and for the first time since arriving in this town, I felt completely unrecognized by reality itself. Night came too quickly over the town, or maybe it never fully left. The streetlights flickered as I walked back toward my car, each one turning on and off in sequences that didn't feel random anymore. They felt arranged, like someone was tapping a code across the street. On, off, off. Then a pause. Then again, I stopped walking. The pattern changed. All the lights along the road blinked once in unison. My chest tightened. I looked around. No people, no cars, just empty streets and houses that seemed to lean slightly toward the road, as if listening. I moved again. The lights responded, not instantly, but as if delayed by thought. They followed my pace, faster when I walked faster, slower when I hesitated, like they were watching me move. The silence grew heavier, not quieter, heavier. My footsteps sounded too distant, like they belonged to someone else walking slightly behind me. I stopped again. Everything stopped, even the lights, frozen in place. Then, across the street, a flicker of movement, a shadow standing near a broken fence. Still, perfectly still. I blinked. It was gone. Then it reappeared exactly where I was standing, copying me. I didn't move. It didn't move. The streetlights began blinking again, but the pattern had changed. Now it matched something else, something that felt closer to breathing than electricity. I stepped back slowly. The shadow across the street did the same. Same delay, same hesitation, same fear, but not mine. Something else's imitation of it. The lights above us flickered harder now, faster, the pattern becoming more chaotic, like communication breaking down. I whispered without meaning to. Stop. The word didn't echo, but every streetlight went out instantly. Complete darkness. Then, one light turned back on, directly above the shadow. It wasn't across the street anymore. It was closer, nearer the center of the road, facing me. I couldn't see its face. Only shape, only presence. And then it moved, not walking, not stepping, just shifting position between frames of light. Every time the lamp flickered, it was closer. The silence became unbearable. No wind, no insects, no distant city noise. Only the faint hum of electricity, struggling to remain present. The lights began blinking again, slower now, deliberate, and I realized the pattern had changed completely. It wasn't random anymore. It was forming something, a shape, a message, a repetition of movement that matched my own earlier steps. The shadow wasn't copying me anymore. It was correcting me, adjusting itself to something I hadn't done yet. And then I understood it wasn't following me. It was waiting for me to complete a pattern I had already started without knowing. The final light above me flickered, once, twice, and stayed on, behind me. The street felt longer than before, and the shadow was no longer across the street at all. It was behind me now, exactly where it had learned to be, waiting for the next step I hadn't taken yet. It started with a sound I almost ignored, a hollow knock inside the wall. Not outside, inside. I was lying in bed when I heard it. The room was dark, except for the pale glow slipping through curtains. The kind of light that makes everything feel half real. Another knock, closer this time. I sat up slowly, listening. Silence returned, but it didn't feel empty. It felt paused, like something had stopped moving just to see what I would do next. Then came the scratching. Soft, careful, measured, not like a rat or wind in pipes. Like fingers tracing the inside of the wall, searching for a weak place. I placed my hand against the plaster. Cold, too cold for a warm room. The scratching stopped instantly, like it had felt me touch back. I pulled my hand away, waited, nothing. Then, a single tap from inside the wall, exactly where my hand had been. My throat tightened. I told myself it was the building settling. Old pipes, nothing more, but the wall felt the wear. The next night, the sound returned. Same place, same timing, but stronger. I barely slept after that. On the third night, I noticed something new. The paint on the wall had a faint vertical line, thin, almost invisible. I leaned closer. It wasn't a crack. It was a seam, and seams mean doors. I don't remember deciding to touch it. My fingers just did. The plaster felt soft under pressure, like dam paper. And then, a shift inside the wall. Not noise, movement, something adjusting itself. The seam widened slowly, revealing a dark outline beneath the surface. A shape, that didn't belong in architecture. A rectangle forming where there should have been nothing. I stepped back immediately. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. The wall didn't stop changing. A door was forming, not breaking through. Becoming. The knob appeared last. Metallic. Still. Perfectly placed. And then it turned. Slowly. From the inside. My breath stopped. I didn't move. The door finished opening just a few centimeters. Not enough to reveal what was inside. Only enough to show darkness. But the darkness wasn't empty. It waited. Patiently. Politely. Like it understood manners. Like it was giving me time to accept it. A whisper came through the gap. Not words. Just breath shaped like sound. Warm. Alive. I stepped back again. The door stayed open. Waiting. That was worse. Not the opening. The patience. I covered the wall with furniture that night. Chair. Table. Anything I could move. But the next morning, everything was back in place. Neatly. Carefully. Like the room had corrected my mistake. And the seam was still there. Wider now. My phone lit up at 3:12 a.m. No notification sound. Just light. A message I didn't recognize. Unknown number. No contact name. Only text. Don't ignore me. I stared at it for a long time. The room was silent except for my breathing and the faint hum of electricity in the walls. Then the phone vibrated again. A voice note. I shouldn't have played it, but I did. The audio was static at first. Soft, unstable. Then my own voice came through. But wrong. Older. Slower. Tired in a way I couldn't understand. I already told you, it said. It's closer than you think. My hand went cold. I replayed it. Same voice. Same sentence. But the ending changed slightly. Like it remembered I was listening. I checked the number. It was still unknown. Then another message appeared. This will happen in 30 seconds. I froze. My eyes locked on the screen. Nothing moved in the room. Except time. 29. 28. I stood up without thinking. 27. My heart started hitting harder. 26. I looked around the room. 25. Everything looked normal. Too normal. 24. Then I heard it. From the hallway. A soft creak. 23. I didn't move. 22. The phone vibrated again. A new message appeared. Turn around. 21. My breath stopped completely. 20. I stared at the hallway door. 19. The creak came again. Closer. 18. I whispered. No. 17. The phone screen flickered. 16. A new voice note appeared automatically. 15. I didn't press anything. It played on its own. 14. My own voice again. 15. But closer. Inside the room. 12. I told you not to wait this long. 11. The hallway door was open now. I didn't remember it opening. 10. Something stood in the doorway. Not fully visible. Just shape. Just presence. 9. The phone vibrated violently. 8. The voice continued. 7. You're already looking at it. 6. I realized I wasn't breathing. 5. The figure in the doorway didn't move. 4. But it felt closer anyway. 3. The phone went silent. 2. Total silence in the room. 1. My phone screen went dark. And from behind me, a breath, right at ear level. I didn't remember walking to the tracks, but I was already there. The air smelled like cold metal and wet stone. Fog rolled low across the rails, curling around my ankles like it was trying to anchor me in place. The night was too quiet for a place this open. Then I heard it, a distant rhythm. Metal against metal. Slow. Approaching. The train should not have been running. These tracks were abandoned. I knew that. Everyone knew that. But the sound grew louder anyway. A light appeared in the fog. Dim at first. Then brighter. Then too bright to look at directly. The train emerged without warning. No announcement. No warning horn. Just arrival. It stopped directly in front of me. The doors opened instantly, like they had already been waiting for me specifically. I didn't move, but my body did. One step forward, then another. Inside, the air changed. Warmer, thicker, too still. The doors closed behind me without sound. The carriage was full, but no one moved. Passengers sat perfectly still, facing forward, their faces blurred, not missing, just unreadable, like someone had erased detail from memory itself. I walked down the aisle slowly. No one reacted, but I felt every presence noticing me, not turning, just aware. The train began moving before I sat down. No acceleration, no shift, just motion already in progress. Outside the windows, the world wasn't passing normally. It was skipping, forests turning into empty fields, into buildings that didn't exist in any order I recognized. I pressed my hand against the glass. Cold, too cold. A reflection appeared behind me in the window, but it wasn't mine. It was a seat number, burned into the glass like a label. My name was written above it. The train jolted slightly, and for the first time, one passenger turned their head, slowly, but there was nothing behind their blurred face, only more blur, as if looking at me erased them further. The train continued. No stops announced, no brakes felt, only endless motion through places that refused to stay consistent. Then the lights flickered, and the intercom clicked on. No sound at first, just breath, then a voice, calm, neutral, familiar, calling my name, the same way the radio had earlier, the same way the phone had. The announcement finished with one sentence. We are arriving soon. But when I looked outside, there was no station, only fog, and a sign appearing through it slowly, with my name written on it. Waiting. I don't remember stepping off the train, but I was in the forest again. No road this time, just trees, too many of them, standing too close together, like they had grown around me instead of me entering them. The air felt alive in a way it shouldn't. Not wind, not movement, breathing, slow, deep, all around me. I took a step forward. The ground responded, softly rising and falling under my feet like a chest inhaling. I stopped immediately. The forest didn't. It kept breathing, watching, waiting. Every tree leaned slightly inward, branches twisting like ribs, forming a cage above me. I walked again, carefully. The sound of my footsteps came back, delayed, like the forest was replaying them after deciding they were important. Then I noticed something worse. Another set of footsteps. Behind me, perfectly matched. I stopped. They stopped. I moved again. They followed instantly. Too perfectly. Too aware. I turned slightly. Nothing behind me. Only fog. But the footsteps continued. Closer now. Not behind me anymore. Beside me. The trees began shifting when I wasn't looking directly at them. Paths appeared and disappeared depending on where I focused. Every direction felt like it was rearranging itself. The breathing grew stronger. Now, clearly not just the forest. Something within it. Something imitating it. I whispered, "I know you're here." The forest responded, not with sound, with stillness. Everything stopped. Even the breathing paused. A silence, so complete it felt like pressure. Then, a breath directly behind my neck. Warm. Close. And I realized the forest wasn't breathing around me. It was breathing through me. The mirror didn't reflect me properly anymore. At first, it was small. A delay. Half a second. My hand would move, then the reflection would follow. I told myself it was lighting. Old glass. Anything logical. But logic stopped working quickly, because the reflection started doing something else. It stopped copying. It started predicting. I would raise my arm halfway, and the mirror version would already be lowering it. Before I finished, I stood still for a full minute. The reflection didn't. It blinked late, then looked slightly to the left. Even though I hadn't moved my eyes, I stepped closer. The mirror showed the room behind me. Wrong. The furniture was rearranged. The angle of the walls shifted slightly, like the reflection belonged to a different version of my room. Then I saw it, behind the reflection, a shadow standing still. Not in my room, only in the mirror, watching, waiting. I turned quickly. Nothing behind me, but in the mirror, the shadow stayed. I reached toward the glass. The reflection reached first. Faster. My hand stopped midair. The mirror version of me didn't stop. It pressed its palm against a glass from the other side, matching mine perfectly. Then it moved wrong. Its head tilted before I did. I didn't move. It did. The reflection smiled slightly. I hadn't. The glass fogged from its side. Slowly, like breath forming on it, words appeared, written backward. "You're late." I stepped back. The reflection didn't. It stepped forward instead, closer to the glass, closer than I was. The shadow behind it moved for first time. Not toward me, toward the reflection itself, like it belonged there more than I did. The lights in the room flickered once. When they stabilized, the reflection was gone, but the mirror still showed movement. Delayed, wrong, as if something inside it was still finishing what I had already done. And I understood something I shouldn't have understood. The mirror wasn't reflecting me. It was correcting me, one moment at a time. I should have felt relief when I saw it again, but I didn't. My childhood house stood at the end of the street, like it had been waiting longer than I had been alive. The shape was correct at first glance. The same roofline, the same windows. But the longer I looked at it, the more it refused to stay familiar. The front door was gone. Not broken, not open, gone. Just a wall where memory insisted there should be an entrance. The air around it felt heavier than the rest of the town, like the house was pulling the silence inward. I stepped closer. The grass under my feet was too soft, almost damp though it hadn't rained. Every step felt slightly delayed, like the ground was thinking before letting me move. A curtain shifted in one of the upstairs windows. I stopped. The movement was slow, careful, like the house itself had noticed I had returned. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer, but the window stayed dark after that, as if listening was enough. I walked along the front wall. My fingers touched the wood, warm. That shouldn't have been possible. The house felt alive under my hand, not in motion, in awareness. I pulled my hand away quickly. Inside, something shifted again. Not sound, not movement, recognition. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. I moved around the side of the house. The structure seemed longer than I remembered. That was the first real wrongness. The backyard should have ended near the fence. But it didn't. It kept going. More house, more walls. Impossible extensions stretching into fog that hadn't been there before. I stepped back. The house did not move, but it felt closer anyway. That night, I stayed outside and watched it. At 2 a.m., a light turned on upstairs. Only one. The window where the shape had been earlier. Something stood there again, watching me watch it. The next morning, I checked the house again. The windows were different. Some were smaller. Some weren't there before. And inside one of them, a family photo hung on the wall. I knew the photo, but the faces weren't right. My family was there, but behind them were people I didn't recognize, standing too close, too still, looking directly at the camera, as if they had always been part of the picture. I stepped away from the window. The glass fogged instantly, from the inside, like something had breathed against it. It always started at 3:13 a.m. No matter when I slept, no matter how deep, the phone would ring. One ring, then silence, then again. I stopped answering after the first week, but it didn't matter. It kept calling. Same time, same number, unknown. One night, I finally picked up. Only silence answered, then breathing, close, controlled, familiar in a way that made my stomach tighten. I didn't speak. The breathing continued for a long time. Then a voice, soft, almost careful. It said my name, but not like a greeting, like confirmation, like it had been checking. I hung up immediately. The phone rang again within seconds. I didn't answer. It kept ringing anyway. Every time I blocked the number, it changed. Every time I silenced it, it got louder until I realized something worse. It wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from the room. At 3:13 a.m., I waited, phone face down, silent, the room dark except for thin light leaking through the curtains. Then, ring, not on the phone, in the room itself, from everywhere at once. I turned slowly toward the hallway. The air felt occupied. The phone vibrated once on the table. A new message appeared without sound. Don't hang up next time. Then, from behind me, a second ring. Closer. I noticed in the corner first. A darkness that didn't belong to the light in my room. It stayed there even when I turned the lamp on. Small at first, barely there, but it didn't fade when it should have. Instead, it deepened like ink soaking into fabric. I told myself it was fatigue, eyes adjusting wrong. But the shadow didn't stay still. It moved, slowly stretching along the ceiling, like it was testing how far it could go. When I stared directly at it, it paused. When I looked away, it grew. I started sleeping with the lights on. That didn't help, because the shadow learned from light. It shifted with it, following brightness instead of darkness, as if it didn't care what formed it, only that it existed. At night, I heard faint movement above me. Not footsteps, more like pressure changing shape, like something shifting its weight across the ceiling from the inside. One night, I whispered without meaning to, "I know you're there." The shadow stopped growing. Everything in the room went still. Then it spread all at once. Not fast, just inevitable, like a stain reaching the edges of paper. It reached the light first, then covered it. The room dimmed without the bulb turning off. The darkness was now physical, pressing downward, closer. The ceiling felt lower than before, like the room was shrinking to accommodate something above it. I stood up slowly. The shadow reacted immediately, not moving, waiting. Then it formed something that looked almost like an edge, a boundary, a shape that wasn't random anymore. It was intentional. It was learning the room, and me. The air grew heavier. Every breath felt like resistance. The shadow finally extended to the center of the ceiling, and stopped, as if it had reached the point it was aiming for. And then I understood it wasn't growing into my room. It was preparing to enter it. It used to be a shortcut. Now it didn't end. I noticed a change the third time I walked through it. The alley between the buildings should have taken less than a minute, but it kept going, longer than before. Walls closer than I remembered. The air heavier with every step. At first, I thought I was just tired. Then I started counting. 30 steps. 50. 70. The exit should have appeared. It didn't. Just more alley. More silence. The walls felt strange under my fingers when I brushed them. Not brick. Not concrete. Something softer. Like they had lost their original material and were becoming something else. Something aware. My footsteps echoed behind me. But not correctly. There was a delay. A second set of footsteps followed mine. Perfectly timed. Too perfectly. I stopped. They stopped. I moved again. They moved instantly. Not behind me. Closer than behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing. Only fog deeper inside the alley than it should have been. But the echo didn't stop. It never stopped. I kept walking. Faster now. The alley stretched further. The walls subtly narrowing. The space between them breathing. At one point, I swore I saw the end. A faint opening of light. I blinked. It was gone. Replaced with more corridor. More impossible length. Then I heard it. Not footsteps anymore. A drag. Something heavier following me. But when I stopped, it stopped too. Waiting. Listening. Learning my rhythm. I whispered, "What do you want?" No answer. Only silence that felt like recognition. The alley shifted slightly. And for the first time, I understood it wasn't leading somewhere. It was containing me. The elevator doors closed too slowly. That was my first warning. The buttons were normal at first, until I pressed one. Then they changed. Numbers I didn't recognize appeared where familiar floors should have been. I pressed 3. The panel flickered, then showed -1. The elevator moved, but not normally. No sense of descent, no gravity shift, just transition. The lights flickered once. When they stabilized, the doors opened. I wasn't in a building anymore. I was at the edge of a forest, fog between trees, silent ground stretching too far. I stepped back immediately. The doors closed, then reopened on a different floor. But it wasn't a floor. It was a hallway that looked like mine, except emptier. No furniture, no detail, just the shape of a life not lived. Inside the mirrored walls, I saw myself, but wrong. Empty versions, standing still, watching me through reflection that didn't match movement. I pressed another button. The panel changed again. This time it showed nothing, just a blank glow. The elevator moved without command. The next stop opened onto darkness. Not empty, just absence. A place where even light didn't decide to exist. The doors tried to close, but something stopped them. Not physical, intentional. The doors reopened halfway, and stayed like that, like something was holding them open from both sides. I didn't move. Neither did the elevator. It waited. So did I. And somewhere between floors that didn't exist, I realized the elevator wasn't transporting me. It was testing where I belonged. It started at midnight. The sound of rain. But wrong. I looked outside expecting storm clouds. Instead, I saw droplets rising, slowly, from the ground, back into the sky, like the world was reversing something it didn't understand. The window glass vibrated faintly as the rain moved upward, not falling, returning. I opened the window slightly. Cold air rushed in, and I heard it, voices inside the rain. Not words clearly, but fragments, memories shaped like sound. The umbrella by the door lifted slightly on its own, as if pulled by invisible weight above it. I stepped outside. The rain moved around me instead of touching me directly, avoiding, observing. Each droplet rising past my face like it recognized something. The sky felt closer than usual. Too close, like it was lowering itself toward the ground instead of staying above it. Then I saw movement above the clouds. Not lightning, not birds. Something walking, slow, deliberate, across the underside of the sky. The rain intensified upward, pulling harder, like gravity had been reversed for everything except me. I whispered, "What is happening?" The rain answered, not in words, but in pressure, in memory, in something that felt like being remembered by something that shouldn't know you exist. And then, all the rain stopped rising at once, hanging in the air, suspended, waiting, as if the sky had paused to listen, and realized I was still there. I noticed them the moment I stopped walking. Footsteps behind me, perfectly timed, not echoing, not delayed, just matching. I stood still on the empty road. The sound stopped instantly. That was the first rule. Whatever was behind me only moved when I did. So I moved again, one step forward. The footsteps followed. Same distance, same rhythm, too precise to be random. I kept walking. The night around me felt unusually quiet, like the world had agreed not to interrupt whatever this was. Even wind seemed paused. Only the footsteps existed. Behind me, close enough to feel, far enough to doubt. I stopped again. Silence. Then one step. The footsteps copied it immediately. No hesitation. No variation. I tried faster steps. They matched. Slower steps. Matched again. I started running. The footsteps ran too. Not chasing. Not falling behind. Just perfectly synchronized. Like they were rehearsing my movement instead of following it. My chest tightened. I stopped abruptly. They stopped instantly. I turned my head slightly. Nothing. Only fog behind me. Thick, motionless. Swallowing the street into white silence. But the footsteps were still there. Not gone. Not absent. Just invisible in origin. I whispered, "Who are you?" No answer. Only breathing. Not mine. Not quite behind me either. Somewhere overlapping my space. The footsteps began again. But slower now. Deliberate. And then, a change. They weren't copying anymore. They were speaking. Each step formed something almost like words. Not language. Pattern. Rhythm. Meaning just out of reach. I froze completely. The footsteps stopped. And in that silence, I realized something worse. They weren't behind me anymore. They were inside my timing. Like they had learned when I would move before I did. I took one step without thinking. The footsteps moved first. Ahead of me, the building looked normal from the outside. That was a lie. Bright lights. Clean glass. Quiet entrance. But no sound inside. No movement. only the soft hum of machines that shouldn't have been running. The doors opened automatically when I approached. Too smoothly, too politely. Inside, the air smelled sterile but stale, like it had been recycled too many times without anything new entering it. The hallway lights flickered gently as I stepped in, each one turning on slightly after I moved. Following me, not guiding, observing. The reception desk was empty, yet the computer screen was on. My name was already typed into the system. No appointment time, no reason, just arrival confirmed. I swallowed hard and walked further in. The corridors stretched too long, longer than the building should allow. Doors lined both sides, each one slightly open, all of them silent, but not empty, because I could feel presence behind them. Waiting, listening. I passed the first room. Monitors beeped softly inside, but no patient, only a warm bed, fresh sheets, as if someone had just left moments ago. I stepped inside one room. The bed was still warm, too warm, like it hadn't cooled down from absence yet. A clipboard rested on the table. I picked it up. My name was on it again, vitals listed, but no diagnosis, just readiness, like something was preparing for me. The hallway lights flickered harder now, faster. I left the room quickly. Every door I passed seemed slightly more open than before, as if they were watching how far I would go. At the end of the hall, an elevator waited. Doors open. Already. I didn't press a button. It was already selected. The doors closed behind me. The ride was silent. No movement sensation. Just transition. When the doors opened, I wasn't in the hospital anymore. I was still inside it, but older. Empty chairs. Dust in corners. Lights still on, but weaker, like the building had been waiting for too long, and still expected me to arrive. It started on the windows, small flickers, like television static pressed against the glass. White noise forming shapes for half a second before dissolving again. Then it spread, across the entire view, the outside world breaking into visual interference. Trees became lines. Buildings became glitches. The sky flickered like a damaged signal. I stepped outside. The air felt unstable, like walking through a frequency instead of space. Every movement caused distortion, my hand leaving trails of broken light. Behind it, the ground wasn't fully solid anymore. It shimmered under my feet, like it couldn't decide what it was. Familiar streets appeared and disappeared as I walked. Streetlights blinking in and out of existence. Houses reshaping themselves between glances. I stopped moving. Everything stabilized for a moment. Then I heard it, inside the static. A low, distant motion. Something inside the interference. Not visible, but present. The fog of visual noise thickened again, and I saw something moving inside it. Not fully formed. Not fully real. Just intention moving through broken signal. I took a step back. The world flickered harder, like it was rejecting stability. I whispered, "Stop." The static paused. Everything went still, then resumed with more intensity. The figure inside the distortion moved closer, not walking, not stepping, just appearing in different positions between signal breaks. My breathing grew shallow. The environment around me no longer felt physical. It felt broadcasted, like I was inside a transmission that had lost its source, and something else had tuned into it. Something that didn't belong in the original frequency. The static grew louder, and then it started responding to me. Every thought I had changed the pattern slightly, as if the world was learning my input. I backed away slowly, but the ground no longer matched my movement correctly. Distance felt rewritten, and I realized I wasn't walking through the world anymore. I was walking through its signal decay. The clock started before I noticed it, a soft ticking in the background of the room. Then I realized it wasn't normal. The sound wasn't moving forward. It was reversing. Tick, 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 undoing itself. I looked at the wall clock. The hands were moving backward, not smoothly, but in small jumps, like time was struggling to remember its direction. I stepped closer. The numbers didn't stay stable. They shifted slightly every time I blinked, hours collapsing into earlier hours, minutes folding into themselves. I said a simple sentence out loud, just to test it. The words left my mouth. then returned, back into my throat, as if they had been unsaid. I froze. The clock ticked faster. Everything in the room felt unstable. I placed a glass on the table. It slid backward into my hand. I dropped it again. It refused to fall forward. Only backward motion existed. Time was reversing locally, not the world. Just here, inside this room, the lights flickered once. And when they stabilized, the room looked slightly younger, cleaner, less worn, like time was erasing damage in real time. The clock sped up, its hand spinning backward faster now, closer to midnight, or what midnight used to mean. I stepped toward the door. It was harder to open than before, like the concept of leaving was weakening. The clock clicked louder, faster. Everything around me began undoing itself in small loops. Footsteps I hadn't taken yet echoed briefly, then disappeared. I whispered, "No!" The word vanished from the air, unspoken, unrecorded. The clock reached the final stretch, seconds collapsing into zero. And in that moment, I felt something waiting, not in the room, in the absence of time itself, something that only existed when everything else stopped moving forward. I only realized something was wrong when I opened the door twice. The first time, it looked normal, my apartment, dim light, familiar silence. The second time, it was the same, but not identical. Same layout, same furniture, but slightly wrong in placement, like someone had rebuilt it from memory. I stood in the doorway, unsure which version was real. I stepped inside. The air felt different immediately. Not temperature, presence. I walked through the room slowly. Everything matched my apartment almost perfectly, but small differences kept appearing. A chair angled slightly differently. A picture frame tilted the wrong direction. A soundless hum in places where silence should have been absolute. Then I saw it. Through the window, another version of me, standing in a second apartment across the street, watching, not moving, just observing my movements like a delayed reflection of something real. I stepped back quickly, but when I looked again, it was gone. I checked my own apartment. Everything still looked normal. Too normal. That was the problem. Because normal doesn't change while you're not looking. At night, things shifted. I woke up to objects moved slightly, not rearranged, adjusted, like something was correcting small errors, as if my presence was being compared against another version. The next morning, I saw it again, the duplicate apartment across the street, and this time, it saw me too. The figure inside raised its hand slightly, a delayed echo of my own movement, but not perfect, slightly off, like it was learning. We both stood still, watching each other through glass and distance, neither of us moving first, because something deep inside told me the first one to act would become the real version, and the other would be overwritten. The late should have been silent, frozen, still, dead quiet under winter air. But it wasn't. I heard it before I saw anything. A whisper, low, pressed under layers of ice, like something trying not to be heard. I stepped closer to the frozen surface. The ice was thick, pale, stretched across the lake like a sealed memory. But the whisper grew stronger the closer I got. Not words. Almost words. Like language trapped in something too solid to escape. I knelt down slowly. The ice beneath my hand felt colder than winter should allow. Too deep. Too old. Then it cracked. A single sharp line spreading outward. Not breaking fully. Just opening its attention. I pulled my hand back immediately. But the whisper didn't stop. It followed me. Now louder. Now aware I had heard it. I stood up. The lake reflected the sky incorrectly. The clouds were wrong. Too low. Too heavy. Like the sky was pressing down to listen. Then I saw a movement beneath the ice. A shadow, slowly drifting, but not floating, positioning itself, like it knew where I was standing above it. I stepped back. Another crack spread, not from pressure, from intention. The ice wasn't breaking randomly anymore. It was responding. I whispered, "What are you?" The whisper beneath the ice paused, then returned, but now it sounded closer. Almost like it was answering from inside my own breath. Footprints appeared on a frozen surface. From beneath, rising upward into visibility. One step at a time. Walking toward me. The library was open even though no one worked there. No lights flickered. No announcements played. Just silence between endless shelves. And the smell of old paper that felt too personal. I walked inside slowly. The doors closed behind me without sound. The books were all the same at first glance. But when I looked closer, the titles weren't words. They were names. Some I almost recognized. Some I shouldn't have. I pulled one from the shelf. It opened itself. No resistance. No binding. The pages weren't printed. They were written in handwriting that looked like mine, but older, tired. I began reading and realized the words were describing things I had not yet done, events I was about to live through. The book turned pages on its own, faster when I tried to stop it, slower when I stopped resisting. I closed it. It reopened. Behind me, the library stretched further than it should have, new aisles appearing where walls used to be. I walked deeper. Bookshelves shifted when I wasn't looking directly at them, like the room was editing itself. Then I saw a book already open on a table, waiting, my name on the cover. I didn't touch it, but it turned pages anyway. Inside, my life, not written as memory, written as completion. The final page was already finished. Even though I was still here, something moved between the shelves. Not walking, not running, just presence sliding between sight lines. I whispered, "Who is writing this?" The library didn't answer, but every book on every shelf turned slightly toward me, listening. I first saw it when I looked up too long. A door, floating, not attached to anything, just suspended in the sky, like it had forgotten gravity entirely. At first, I thought it was a reflection, but there was no surface to reflect it, only clouds, slowly shifting around it like they were avoiding contact. The door was old, wooden, out of place against the endless gray sky. It didn't move, but it felt aware. I watched it for a long time, until I realized it was slightly rotating, depending on where I stood, like it was trying to align itself with me. I stepped closer into the open field. The air grew lighter, stranger, like distance itself was thinning. The door creaked softly. Even though there was no wind, it opened slightly, a gap of light spilling downward. Not sunlight, something else, something heavier than light. Voices came from above, faint, calling without words. The sound made my chest tighten. Then something shifted behind the door, a shape approaching from the other side. Slow, careful, like it was learning how to descend instead of fall. I stepped back immediately. The door didn't close. It waited, as if it had already chosen me. The sky around it darkened slightly. Not night, not storm, just focus. Like everything above was narrowing attention into a single point. And I understood that door wasn't in the sky. The sky was around it. I didn't remember starting to drive again, but the road was under my wheels. The forest returned too quickly, too correctly, like it had been waiting for this exact moment to rebuild itself. Fog lined the edges of the road like familiar breath. The headlights felt weaker this time, not broken, diminished, as if the road was deciding how much of itself I was allowed to see. The mile markers appeared again, but now they didn't count forward or backward. They looped. Wrong order, wrong meaning. I slowed down. The forest reacted immediately, trees leaning inward, closer than before, like they remembered me. The radio turned on by itself, static first, then fragments of voices, not new voices, old ones, my journey replaying itself through broken signal. I tightened my grip on the wheel. The road began overlapping, places from earlier chapters appearing briefly between trees. A hospital hallway flashed for half a second, then disappeared. A train window replaced the forest, then vanished. The world was folding, stacking itself. The shadow appeared ahead, standing in the road. But this time, it didn't stay outside. It stepped into headlights and into the car, not through doors, not through glass. Just arrival. It sat in the passenger seat, without moving, facing forward. Not looking at me, Not needing to, the radio crackled again, now playing everything backwards. My entire journey reversed through sound. Every whisper, every breath, every step. The road no longer felt like it led anywhere. It only repeated. The passenger finally moved slightly. A small tilt of its head. Not toward me, toward memory, like it was reviewing everything I had already done. And I realized something I couldn't unrealize. It wasn't joining me now. It had always been here, just waiting for me to complete the loop. Arrival was never real. That was the first thought that came when everything stopped feeling linear. The road, the town, the house, the train, the forest, all of it collapsing into one continuous moment. Not separate events, not chapters, just loops inside a single breath. I understood that I was remembering things I had not yet finished experiencing, or maybe already had. The shadow in the passenger seat shifted slightly, not looking at me, still not looking, because it didn't need to. It already knew what I was becoming. The road outside no longer moved forward. It just existed, endlessly, without direction, without destination. The radio played one final time, not static, not fragments. A full voice. My voice. Calm, slow, tired in a way that felt ancient. You're close, it said, but there was no close. Only repetition. The car stopped moving, not braking, not stalling, just deciding. The forest outside leaned in completely now, surrounding everything, closing the world into a single point of awareness. The passenger seat was empty for half a second. Then it wasn't, because I understood the truth. It was never someone else. It was a version of me that had already finished this loop, waiting, not to leave, but to repeat it correctly. The radio clicked one final time, and the voice spoke again. This is where it begins. Not ends. Begins. The road behind me became the road ahead. The forest rearranged itself without sound, and I realized I was already driving, already seeing it again, already forgetting that I had ever asked for escape. And somewhere in the fog, the shadow stood at the roadside, waiting, just like it always had, for me to pass by, again,